Welcome. This is Stefan X, and today I've got the one and only, a very, very special guest. It's an honor, it's a privilege. Sammy Town from FANG. How are you?
Oh, good. It's really hot here. I live in Arizona now. I don't know how hot it is in New Zealand.
It's
Uh,
cold, my friend. It's
it-
cold.
well, you could have it's like 107 outside right now, so it's hot as
Oh,
fuck
well.
here.
Okay. Oh, I don't know which I prefer, the extreme or this. It's two extremes, isn't it?
Because wait, where are you in New Zealand?
I'm in a place called Taranaki. Now, do you know of Auckland?
I mean,
Or,
I've never been there, but I mean, I know.
okay, Wellington's the capital. I'm in a smaller town, and it's just a small country right on the ass end of the world, and um, it's cold. Yeah, but it's meant to
Always
be.
is it always cold in New Zealand?
No, no, we got summers that are okay. They get nice. We go like degrees, so uh, our highs are like 28 degrees. I don't know what you guys are Fahrenheit or something, right?
I don't know. Yeah,
107.
I don't know what
Yeah,
that is in Fahrenheit.
neither do I. My schooling's failing me right now. But anyway, shall we look, I want to jump into some stuff. So I've got here your first band was Shut Up. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yes. That's well, actually, the very first band was this band called Reign of Terror, but we never played live. You know,
Okay.
it was a garage band. It was me and three other kids, and we actually never played a show live, but we wrote a bunch of songs. The guitar player in that band was a guy named Turner, and he went on to play in the band Special Forces. And they were
Okay.
another East Bay, Berkeley punk rock band that was around for a while. And
Nice,
so,
nice.
yeah,
So did Shut Up, they didn't, you guys play live at all?
if we Shut Up played live, we played at it's like a super gnarly dive bar in the Tenderloin. It's a area in San
Wow.
Francisco that was like, how can I describe it? I don't know if you have.
I've heard of the Tenderloin, my
Right.
friend.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's 1979 in the Tenderloin. It was super grimy.
Oh, wow.
It
Yeah.
was a known. There wasn't many places that would allow punk rock back then, but they did, and it was also 21 and over because even in California had the drinking age was 21, and I was
Yeah.
14 at the time, so I could go in and
Cool.
play, but then I had to, like leave. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
you're done playing,
Kind
get
of
out of here.
kind of like Harley Flanagan on the other side. He was young and had to, I guess, leave. He couldn't drink, right? He's in the bars at 12 or whatever.
Yeah,
But
and then it's like you have to go sit in the van. You know.
yeah. Fuck, so cool. Did you play at Gilman Street back in the day? Or
Yeah,
no?
yeah, oh yeah, we did Gilman Open. I want to say around '86, and
So a little bit later than when you started.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that I think Tim Yohannan and I, we all, he was the one who Maximum Rock and Roll, and we bumped
Yeah.
heads
Yeah.
very early on.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, Fang, would you guys be in that crowd? I couldn't see it, you know?
right. But the other thing about it was the scene was super small at
Right.
the same time, and so as much as Tim Yohannan, and also I was I was a kid. He was like
Yeah.
a grown man. I was, when Tim Yohannan and I first started bumping heads, I was probably 13 or 14,
Wow. Yeah.
because I was a troublemaker, and
Well,
he
we all think we know it at that age, don't we? But
yeah,
you know,
yes.
we
Yeah,
learn.
and to me, he was kind of like an adult. It's like, dude, fuck you, like
Yeah,
I'm a kid. I do what I
he,
want. Go,
yeah.
but it was also a small scene. So it was kind of like, and we had a lot of friends in the scene. So he wasn't really trying to 86 us or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but,
Okay,
and,
that's
so
cool.
we played Gilman a number of times back,
Yep, yep.
back in the day,
Okay.
it was.
But so before, when did Fang was like started, what, 80 before you guys? 1980?
Yes,
Before you
Fang
started
started,
singing?
Tom Flynn and this guy Brian, they started it. It was like a high school band in Connecticut. Those two guys
Yeah,
were in Connecticut, and they put
yeah.
out 1 7-inch, and then they graduated high school. Uh, Brian went to college in Austin, Texas, and he had a band called Glass Eye, I think they were
Okay.
called. And he uh, did some stuff with Daniel Johnston and
Oh wow, really?
yeah, Brian is definitely around in the music scene and doing stuff in Austin. Still is around and doing stuff in the music
Yeah.
scene in Austin. And Tom Flynn went to Chicago and to start going to college, and I guess lasted 3 weeks and said fuck this and came to California to
That's
play
what I would
punk
have
rock.
done too.
Yeah,
Good,
that was a
good.
good call. Good call on his
Very
part.
good call.
Yeah.
Fucking
So
oath.
when he got to Berkeley, he started putting Fang back together with some different guys, and they played a couple shows, and then they got rid of the drummer they had, and they were trying out drummers. And my best friend at the time was this guy Joel Fox, and he was the drummer. He was in a band called Subsidized Mess, and
Yep.
that band later became Crucifix.
Oh wow. Cool.
With a different drummer. Joel was not in Crucifix, but those guys that played in Subsidized Mess ended up starting Crucifix right after that. And so uh, Tom asked, Joel tried out for Fang, and I went with him. And after he tried out for Fang, I told Tom, and I was like 15 and very full of myself. I'm like, you guys need a lead singer. And Tom's like, he goes, yeah, I've been thinking about that. He goes, you got anybody in mind? I'm like, yeah, me. Yeah.
Numero
So
uno.
yeah,
Yes.
so he said come back next practice with Joel. We'll give it a try.
Well, I'll
So
tell
so
you
that
what,
was
it
yeah.
worked out, Sammy. Fucking excellent, excellent
Definitely.
decision there.
Mm,
You know.
it certainly
Very.
worked out for me.
So, who is the drummer? I know that's Tommy Flynn right there.
So that's Tim Stiletto. That's the second drummer,
Yeah.
Joel Fox. Right, he recorded on Landshark, and
Okay.
he was. We both, Joel and I were pretty hardcore, into drugs. But Joel was also quite a bit older than I was. Like when I
Yep.
joined Fang, I was 15, and he was already 21. You
Okay. So
know,
he's moved, graduated a little bit, maybe
yeah,
into
and
yeah,
Tom and Chris were also, a few
heavy
years
years.
older than me. They were, yeah, like
Yeah.
when I was 15, 16, they were already 20, 21. Uh, so Joel, he had already developed some problems with his drug addiction, and we were getting ready to go on our first tour. And Tom called me, and he's like, Joel's sweating me for money, and he's being a real problem.
Yep.
And so he goes, I really don't want to go on tour with him. And I'm like, you know what?
Uh,
Let's and Joel, and soon after that Joel went to prison for the first time, and then
okay.
he was in and out of prison. I think he's actually out now, but he
So in
just
and out since then.
since then, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think the last bid he did like a 16-year bid this last
Oh
time,
wow.
because
Wow.
because he keeps getting into trouble, you
Well, the
know.
system makes it very hard, to get out of it. I know in
Yes.
here, anyway, in New Zealand, I've been to prison too, and they made it very hard to get out of the system.
Yeah,
But
it's
once
a
I got out, I'm out.
Yeah, and it's money, you know. I mean,
Yes.
for the state, it's the prison industrial complex. They don't make money if you stay out, so they want to make it as hard for you as possible because they're making a shit
That's
ton of
right.
money off you.
Yeah,
You
so
know.
the conditions they put on you, it's like made to fail nearly. You can
Yeah, yeah.
get through it if determination, but So this picture we've got here, is this what you
Yeah.
guys went on tour with?
That was our first, our actual first tour van, and that van. So uh, our first big U.S. tour, and back then when we used to tour, we'd go out for like 3 to 5 months.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, we'd go
Black
out
Flag
for
style.
like a long time, and sometimes you wouldn't play for. I remember being in Cincinnati, Ohio. We were like out of money. We didn't have a show for 4 or 5 days. I'm like spare changing for top ramen and
Panhandling.
beer. You know, yeah. It's like,
Fuck
but
yeah.
that van, uh, that was our first like big U.S. tour van. Before we had that van, we had this fucked up station wagon, but we never. The
Yeah,
station wagon was just where we went around California, but that was like okay,
yeah,
we're gonna do a big U.S. tour, and so we went out on the road, and uh, that van, the reason it got painted that way, so we ended up playing a bunch of shows, or well, maybe a handful of shows with Crucifix, and there was this band from I think they were from Virginia called White Cross,
yep,
and
yep.
Crucifix. Like I'm super good friends with Sothera now, but some of those like the bass player, those guys were super political. They got on
Oh,
the
okay.
they got on the Crass label, and I've always been a criminal, and
Yes,
so
yeah, yeah. I've
they're
been
like,
yeah,
yeah, I was dealing drugs since I was like 12. I always, like I had
yeah,
caught my first felony when I was 13. It was in juvenile hall, and
yeah.
so we never,
Politics wasn't something you ever go for, right? It's not really
that's
in it.
just, but they always thought that they were better than us. They
Oh,
they
yeah,
they got on the Crass label, and they had a big, especially the bass player. He had a very high opinion of themselves, and so they were actually pissed that we were ending up playing all these shows, but there wasn't that many shows. It's like,
yeah,
oh, wait, we've got two California bands in the same basic area at the same time. We're going to put them on the same bill. But
makes
the
sense.
that we get to Baltimore, and we pull up, and there's this loft, and there's not a lot of people there. And like I said, we pulled up. Crucifix and White Cross were there, and there's this guy, kind of a hippie. His name was Jules, and he had this loft, and we're going around, and loft's cool as shit. It's like
Yeah,
Baltimore and old brownstone. It's like this whole area. A bunch of people live there. It's very, like fucked up punk rock East Coast.
wicked.
And this
That's the
was,
shit.
early 80s, maybe 82 or something. There's all this graffiti on all the walls, and that really
Yeah,
hadn't come. It was big in New York. It was big on the East Coast. Hadn't really
yeah.
made it to California yet, and
Okay.
so
Not till the
uh,
gangs, yeah,
yeah,
or whatever.
and just like the kids in New York had started like
The trains
graffiti
and all that.
hitting the trains. So Jules like, look, I need to talk to all you guys. So he pulls us and Crucifix and White Cross together. He goes, hey, look, uh, like everyone's broke. We don't really have any money, but we want you guys to play, right?
Yeah.
And Crucifix and White Cross immediately go, oh wait, there's no money, and they just get in the van and split.
Aren't they supposed to be
I know.
police, right?
Yes,
Isn't
right.
that like up to LA to do that
That's
for
that's what
some
I
reason?
thought. That's what I thought. So I'm standing there, and I'm looking at all this graffiti, and I'm like, hey, who does all the graffiti? And Jules goes, well, that kid Danny over there does some, and there's another guy there. And I said, how about we do this? We'll play for you guys. You guys blast our van with some graffiti,
No.
and so we stayed and played, and fucking Danny, and Danny and another guy, I can't remember the other guy's name. They did that piece on the van, and the great thing for us was because we were the ones that stayed. Yeah, that symbol on the door there, that's the other guy's symbol, and I can't remember his name.
Okay.
But
It's so cool. It's
we
so funny.
always were able to come back to Baltimore and have a great time there because we were the band that stayed.
Yeah,
And
you guys said yes and
yeah,
all that.
and
Yeah.
the guy Danny who did that graffiti art piece, he became a pretty famous tattoo artist. He was
Oh, cool.
sang in a band called Reptile House way back then, and then his name is Dan Higgs, and he also had a band called Lungfish, and
Okay.
and they were, and as a tattoo artist, he got pretty well known, but that was like way before he'd ever started tattooing, when he was just
Yeah.
like a graffiti art kid in
Oh,
in Baltimore.
that's
So
badass. That's badass. I fucking love that van. It's like, yeah, that is a land shark, you know?
yeah, it was awesome, and the crazy thing too. I look back on it now, like driving around the United States in that van back then. It was like, I'm surprised.
Much police? Yeah.
It was dangerous to be a punk rock kid back then
Yeah.
in the U.S.
And in New
And
Zealand. Yeah.
I'm sure I would
Yeah.
imagine everywhere, that
Mhm.
we got fucked with a lot. When
Yep.
I was a freshman in high school, I got jumped like I dropped out of high school my freshman year, but it was, I would fight like all the time,
What
because
does freshman year mean for high school? So, like, is that your
so
first year of high school?
that would be when you're uh, 13, 14, 15. There's 4 years of high
Okay.
school. So it's your first year. It's freshman, sophomore. I don't even, I dropped out. I don't, what do I
Yeah,
know?
because it's different here.
Freshman,
So,
sophomore, junior, senior. So it's your
right.
first year of high school.
Okay. So
You know?
pretty young, you were out there, jumped
Yes,
off the board.
79. I was in
Yeah.
high school and I had blue hair. I had my ear pierced, and
Yeah.
I was the only boy in my high school to have my ear pierced. I got fucked with constantly for that, and it
Oh,
was just
mate.
the way it
Of
was.
course. Yeah. I've got like some slides. So you guys are playing soon, right? In Belgrade, I see. Is
Yeah,
it
we're going
Should be.
to Europe. We have
Um,
a European tour coming up in like 2 weeks, something like that, 3 weeks.
I
That's yeah,
see. This is
Serbia.
one. And then, yeah, so that was gonna be a trip, man. Like,
Yeah, I'm super excited about
wow.
playing Serbia. You know,
Yeah,
that's
I can't even imagine it, you know?
yeah, and we're playing in Croatia. Uh,
Yeah. I've seen,
uh,
yeah, the Europe tour is big, right? Like,
so I'm super stoked. Someday I'd love to be able to come through, uh,
New Zealand?
New
Or
Zealand, and we definitely, like, I'd like to do Australia too. I mean,
yeah. It
uh,
it
that's
makes sense to if you have to do Aussie to do New Zealand, really, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
to get yeah, because New Zealand's only a few shows. How old were you here, you reckon?
That was probably maybe 86. So I was probably maybe 21, 20, maybe 22, 20, 21,
Yep,
22, something around there.
yep. And, what's the story behind is this with the crazy spike hairdo?
Yeah, I don't know. I think so. What was the
I
story?
I
What
can't
was the story? Why? I don't know. That's a good question.
yeah, I've
Why
always
did I,
wondered.
I nobody asked me that either, and I don't know. I wasn't gonna do a mohawk. I think in part
No.
just to be a weirdo.
Yeah,
It was
being a
like
punk rocker, right? Doing
it's something
something
different.
else.
It's like
Yeah.
people had mohawks, people had spiked hair. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna do.
You don't wanna be the same,
I
so
just do something different, and
like
then we put it on the then put it on the skull, and then it became,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
iconic now, the logo.
yeah, yes, but
So that's
yeah,
great.
what was I don't know. It was just my signature hairstyle, and but yeah, why just because maybe nobody had done it, I guess, it
Yeah,
was something different,
yeah,
you know.
'cause the Misfits had the
They
devil
had the
lock, but
devil
that was
lock,
like, that
yeah,
was a real
you know,
you know,
yeah.
devil spike. So, yeah, it became this really, eh? this logo?
Yeah, it's definitely become part of the whole the whole idea now. You know,
So,
but
in the late 80s, where you had to go on a extended stay from the state, um, as we all do sometimes. How was so you went to San Quentin, right?
yeah, so uh, that was the reception center. I don't know how you said you've been to the to prison in New Zealand. I don't know
Yeah.
how it works in New Zealand, but in California, the state was kind of split up into Northern California and Southern California. California is
Mhm.
a huge prison state. You
Oh
know,
yeah, and
they
very segregated, right?
yeah, it was super political to in prison and super fucked up and you know there's millions of dollars, you know, or well probably billions of dollars, but the California prison system made you know so much fucking money. I was just
Yeah.
hanging out with Shane Einholm. He's a tattoo artist, and he was a bank robber. He was a guitar player for a band called the
Yeah.
Flower Leopards, and so we were
Okay.
just talking about because he did a bunch of time back then, just reminiscing on the prison system. But
Yeah.
if you, he was, I was from Northern California, so if you went to prison in Northern California, everybody starts in San Quentin.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but then you're depending on how much time you bring. Kind of depends on where you go. So if you have
The
if you're
classification
coming in
level.
with more than 10 years, which I had an 11-year sentence, they send
Yeah.
you to what's called Murderers Row in Carson section or C block, and it's a small yard. If you come in with less time, you would go to what was called West Block back then. I think it's maybe still called West Block, but
Okay. Yeah.
it was, you know, Carson section was it was a it had a lot of guys with a lot of time, you know, coming
Yeah.
in, and then it was broken up. So San Quentin as a prison too, super old. You know, it
And
was
you see it on the movies and stuff. Like that's a yeah, it's a old prison. It's
it's
a
It,
fucking
it's an
wow.
old prison. You can put, I don't know if I can, so you can put one hand, how do I do this for the camera? One hand with your elbow on the wall and your other hand touches the wall, the
Yeah.
other wall. That's how
Same as
wide the
in New
cell
Plymouth.
is.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's two guys in the cell.
Oh
And,
well, yeah. Fuck that. And New Plymouth was single cell. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a little bit,
Oh shit. Where'd you go?
it's, you know,
There you
and
go.
it's bars and there are 5 tiers. So,
Yeah.
you know, and so Murderers Row in San Quentin was the 4th tier. So you're pretty high up there, you
It's
know.
crazy those tiers because they can just put you off and throw you off those things and
Yeah,
that's
that
it.
there's no screen or anything on
No,
the tiers. Maybe they've done that now, but back
but not
then
back then.
there
No.
was no protection or anything. And so that's uh, you know, it was when shit kicked off. It was really intense, you know, in
Yes,
San
yes.
Quentin. You know, like when I was there, I was probably on the yard for maybe a week before I saw my first yard killing. You know, a guy got his
Wow.
head crushed with a dumbbell because they had weights on the yard back then. You know,
Yeah. Before they took
and
them away, and
yeah,
just
but
folded
they
them
took
or whatever to the thing, blocks.
and also politically, you aren't supposed to do that, you know, like because nobody wanted the weights to be taken away. So
Exactly. You sort
yeah,
that out
so
somewhere
that
else,
was uncommon
yeah,
for somebody to make a move like that, you
like
know.
an unsanctioned kind of move, right?
Yes, yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And I don't know what, you know, what the reason the guy killed him. You know, I don't know what the beef was behind it. You know, like I said, I was
yeah.
super new
First,
to the
first
prison
week.
system, and but it was one of those things too where I'm sitting there, you know, with guys. We're playing cards at a picnic table,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it gets quiet, you
Oh
know,
yeah, I know that quiet.
And when it gets quiet, that's
It's
when
not
you're
good.
like, okay, something's about to fucking to go
All your
down.
senses go hiding, right? And you're like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. So you're
yeah,
sitting there and you're like, and you're like looking at everybody else and they're looking at you and you're
yeah,
like, okay,
yeah,
everybody's kind of watching so we can watch each other's back
yeah.
and
Without
you
drawing too
know,
much attention, and
right.
yeah,
Yes,
it's fucked up.
exactly. And then it, shit in an instant. And it was, uh, the guy killed him and the guy's laying on the bench. The guy was working out on a bench and the guy, brained him
Yep.
and he's laying there dead. And there's a gunner in a gun tower, but it's literally like right above where it was.
Okay.
So the
It's
gunner
pretty
didn't
scary.
immediately see it,
Yeah.
but the gunner also could sense that something was wrong, and he's
Yeah.
kind of looking, and he's looking and it takes him a minute to finally like kind of lean down and look down and then he sees the
Oh,
guy and then he hits the
uh,
alarm and then
it was too
everybody
late
has to
anyway.
hit the ground and and then
What
they
did
go
he
through the
die
tunnel.
there? Like it was too late.
Yeah,
He
it,
died
it, it,
there.
it pretty much killed him right away, well,
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, he was not moving,
No.
and so
How
um,
long did you spend in San Quentin before going to Soledad?
so I was there for probably about I think I was only there for maybe about 6 months,
Okay.
in
Yeah.
San Quentin before I was shipped to Soledad. And Soledad at that time I was on the central yard and it was uh, a
These
max
level
yard,
four,
a level four
level four
yard
yards.
at
Yep.
that time. And it was there was it was a lot of politics on that yard,
Yeah.
but the other thing that Soledad did have, uh, it was an old prison, sort of like San Quentin, so it had a lot more programs. Like some of the
Okay.
newer prisons, like later on, I was in Solano, and there was just like nothing going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as
Yeah.
like any kind of music or art classes or anything like that, it was all just very much uh, just punishment.
Just
You're just
you're just doing your days without any
yeah,
other cool shit
right. I
going
mean,
on.
you have to work, but solid. The older prison. The other thing that was better about the older prisons, it's when you had guards that had, when you had cops that had been working there for a while in a
Yes.
prison like Soledad, they didn't sweat the small shit.
That's
I-
right.
I-
They know what to worry about, right? And
yeah,
they know it's gonna kick off if they do this and that. And when
yeah.
those new guards come in, they fuck it all up usually, you
Yes,
know.
they create a more dangerous situations
Yeah.
for the other guards,
Hassling
So
people they shouldn't be hassling, that don't get hassled.
yeah, it's like because you're not supposed to tattoo or get tattooed in prison,
No, of course.
and the write up is destruction of state property, just so that you're
Like,
put in your place. Yes, you are a property of your
yeah,
property of the state. So if
exactly.
somebody puts a tattoo on you, you've just destroyed state property. So it just dehumanize you a little bit more.
Yeah,
But the guards in Soledad, they didn't especially the older, they didn't give a shit about stuff like that, because they
wicked.
had
Cool.
bigger shit to worry about, you know.
Yeah, murders and shit that could pop
Yeah,
off.
there was a,
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
level
a lot
4.
of stabbings in Soledad. It
Yep.
was it was super common. While I was in Soledad too, the LA riots kicked off. you
Oh,
know
shit. Really?
so yes, that was 92. So
Yep.
they locked down the whole the whole prison system was locked down in California when that happened. And my cellie had a TV, so we were like watching the riots on TV
Yep.
while they were happening. Um, and then everything was locked down for a while because they didn't know
They didn't
what
know if
was.
there'd be tension in,
Yeah,
the race?
so and after it happened, there was a statewide peace treaty between the Crips and the Bloods,
Yep. Yep. I
and
remember this.
and yeah, and they had
Farrakhan did it.
on the yard, the Muslims facilitated a sit
Oh,
down with the
in the
Crips and
yard.
the Bloods, and they all ate together, and that was it didn't last, but that
Okay,
was
yeah,
the only time I ever really saw that kind of a sit down where it's like, okay, like we're not fighting each other,
yeah.
so the Crips and the
I thought
Bloods
you meant
had to sit down.
on the outside. It kind of happened too.
Yeah,
Minister
yeah.
Farrakhan, I think, set up a thing with the
Had
Bloods and
tried to,
Crips.
yeah, to join the two
Yeah.
factions. And I think it's like anything, you have uh, you have too many killings on both sides.
Mm.
You know,
And
it's like,
extremism is not good in any situation, right? Like,
that it couldn't last. I think that
no,
there's
too
just
much bloodshed.
too much bloodshed on both
Yeah,
sides.
yeah.
So it's
And
just,
we've got that in New Zealand. Mostly like the two biggest are the Black Power and the Manga Mob, which would be seen as like the Bloods and Crips, I guess. You know,
yeah.
they've been around since the late 60s. But
Oh
yeah,
wow.
it's a bit different, our gang culture. It's
Hmm.
a lot of I don't know. We won't get into that bullshit. I really was interested in talking about the time you spent on the lam, fucking, hiding
on
out.
the on the run.
Yeah.
So uh, yeah, that was another Tim Yohannan. Maximum Rock and Roll posted my wanted poster in their
Oh,
magazine,
come on,
which,
really?
like I said,
Oh,
me and Tim
thanks,
never.
Tim.
But I mean, look,
All good, all publicity is good publicity.
well, I, I, I know that. I think to not address, I did a horrible, horrible thing.
Yep.
I
Yeah, yeah,
can't,
yeah,
I can't, uh, I, uh, I can't take that back. I can't
yeah,
change that. And I don't ever excuse what I did. You know,
yeah, man.
I, it is what it is. It was,
It's can't take back, but I've seen in a thing you were talking about when you got your daughter, and I could see in your eyes, like you couldn't forgive yourself, but it was they were forgiving you, the parents, right?
mhm.
And
I mean,
it
yeah.
it is what it is,
Um,
but yeah,
So uh, I immediately went on the run, and
yeah.
I left California and I went to Baltimore. Actually, I was talking about, but because I had a lot of friends, from years of playing in Baltimore and from that first trip, and
Yeah.
so I first went. I went to Baltimore. Um, I act so I I left the Bay Area. I went up to Sacramento. Uh, Dusty, who's now dead, he was the bass player of Tales of Terror. I went
Oh
to
wow. Yeah.
Dusty and I'm like, look, I got to get out of California. I can't use my ID. Can
Yeah.
you go buy me a plane ticket? Here's some cash. So he went and got me a plane ticket to Baltimore, and so I flew to Baltimore, and then I hooked up with a guy there that I knew, and we ended up. He drove me to New York, so I was in Baltimore for maybe
Okay.
a
It's
day or two, and then I
That's
went to
where
New
I
York.
read you were hanging with Joe Coleman. Is it Joe Coleman, the
Yeah,
artist?
and Jonathan Shaw. They were trying to help me. Jonathan Shaw is a tattoo artist,
Yeah.
and he's pretty well known. So Joe and Jonathan's was married to a Brazilian woman. And
Okay.
so he's like, look, let's figure out a way to get you to Brazil, because at that time there was no extradition treaty between
Yeah.
Brazil and the United States. And so they were trying to help me and figure out a way to get me
A way
to
out.
Brazil, to get me to Brazil's, because if I, if Jonathan Shaw had a whole community down there, there was a bunch of expats down there that
Yep.
were on the run for,
Yep.
and
And working and doing their thing already, so you
yes.
could
So uh,
integrate.
and I'd known Joe. I didn't really know Jonathan that well, but I met Joe when I was 16, and he
Okay,
was,
wow.
so we've been friends, for well, I mean, I was 24 when I was on the run, so really it's like 8 years we've known each other, and
Was he a big
we,
artist already, when you're, like, around that time? Or
not when I first met him. No, he was a cab driver. He was a New York
yeah,
cab driver. We'd shoot dope and hang out in the Lower East Side together, and he was just getting started in his artistic career.
yeah,
He played in a band called Steel Tips, and he was doing like the performance art stuff, but his career had not really exploded yet,
right,
and he was definitely uh, by '89 he was a lot more well known, but he really hadn't
yeah.
like blown up to the point that he did.
By the time you got out, he kinda blowing up.
Yeah, by the time
Right,
I got out, he was a famous artist at that
yeah,
point. He really had taken off. But uh, so they were trying to help me get down to Brazil, and had something set up, and it fell apart, and I was running out of money, so I always made money selling acid.
yep,
LSD
yep,
was, I was brought into the acid family as a kid, and that was my main hustle. And so I'd been in New York for a while, trying to get to Brazil, and I was running out of money, and so I'm like,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
I'm going to go back to California and make some moves so I can get some money together. And so I came back to California, and I was laying low in California trying to make some money, and I got a job for a minute, and it was like I was working at a pizza parlor in
yeah,
Berkeley, and the
under
wanted
someone else's name.
poster, well, yeah, but there's a wanted poster like on the business next door to the
Oh my
pizza parlor where
god.
I
Yeah,
worked, in the
yeah,
window. But
I
I was on the DL. I wasn't back in California too long, and I finally went to Alaska. That
yep,
there was a woman that I knew, and she was a sex worker and
mhm,
longtime heroin addict like myself,
yep,
and she had gone to Alaska, and she's like, Sammy, because part of my problem was I was strung out. I was super strung out,
yeah,
and
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 going to jail like that is not, you don't wanna do that,
well, and being
right?
on the run like that is also hard
Oh,
and so I'm like,
oh, I
okay,
couldn't imagine.
I have to kick if I'm going to keep running.
Yep,
So she's like, come to Anchorage. And so I flipped some acid, made some money, and I went up to Anchorage, Alaska, and I actually was able to kick up in Alaska. That
you did it.
that
You got
there,
clean.
yeah, I got off
Cool.
heroin at least,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
Alaska was Anchorage, Alaska in 1989 it was kind of still super cowboy town. I mean,
hadn't caught up.
there was like hardly any cops there. It was kind of, and I hooked up with these folks through that woman Amy, and we were doing a lot of crime up there because it was super easy.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah,
had these kids that were shoplifters, and we drop them off and come back, pick them up, and
get
do
them
there
to
was
do it.
like
Yep,
this whole crew of boosting and returns, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
then this other guy, Marty, who he was a knockout artist. The dude,
right.
could he come up, and he could
One punch.
just one punch, yeah.
Yeah,
And so Marty and I would go to the bars, and people in Alaska, it's hardcore drinking, it's
yeah,
hardly
and fighting.
alcoholism. We'd go to the bars, and I would sit and I would pick a pigeon. I would wait to see somebody who's really drunk who would pull out a wad of cash. And
Yeah,
then when they either went to the bathroom or they walked outside, I'd say, and Marty'd knock them out, and I know what pocket their money was in. So grab their
yep.
money and run.
Run the
Uh,
pockets.
yeah. So we were kind of running amok, and then Jerry's dead now. In fact, Jerry ended up in prison in Washington, or no, in Oregon. Marty ended up in prison in Washington, and I ended up in prison in California. So all these guys that I was running amok
How's
with
that?
in Alaska, we all ended up in prison all along the Western Seaboard. But
Yeah.
Jerry and I, we did a few armed robberies up there, but it was in Alaska in the wintertime, and he had this fucked up truck. So I would go in and rob a liquor store, but then
Yeah.
you come like you can't run in the snow, but
No.
and you can't just like take off because your tires will spin. So
Yeah, man.
I
It's a
I, I would
problem.
yeah, it's a
That's
problem.
a problem,
So,
Sammy.
so I would come out of the liquor store and we'd like drive away, and I'd like sit down on the edge of the boat, and he's just like driving away at like 5 miles an hour, while I'm just sitting
Uh,
on the bumper. But we were running amok in Anchorage until I got word. There's a woman who I knew, and there was a lot of people that were ratting on me, that were
yep,
telling the
of course.
cops where
Yep.
I was, and so she was hanging out with people that were telling on me, and so she would tell me when I was getting told on.
Good.
So
Yeah. Good to
yeah,
have someone like that in your life.
yeah, so I got
Yeah.
word. She called me like, "Hey, they know you're in Alaska. You got to get out
Yep.
of there."
Get out of
So
there.
so it was a snowstorm, and so I went to go to the airport, and everything was shut down
Okay.
because of the
Heaps.
snow in Alaska, and so I had to wait 24 hours to go back to the airport, but that gave them enough time that
To get you. Oh.
uh, the next
Oh.
day the federal marshals were waiting for me,
Oh,
you know,
damn.
and so
Fuck.
they popped
It
me.
must be stressful going to an airport when you're on the run and wanted, right? Going
Yeah,
into
and
an airport.
I so that was one of those situations. Like I said, it was 24 hours later, so I already
Yeah.
felt like, and when I got to that airport, I knew that I
You
was
felt
fucked.
it?
I felt it. And uh, that was before, you just walked into the airport. I had a girlfriend up there, and she'd gotten the plane ticket in her name,
Yep.
but she gave me the boarding pass because I didn't ever check on that. But I just, I knew, and I
Mm,
walked in there, and
yeah.
actually that guy Marty was getting on the plane with me. We were going to go to Seattle, the guy with the knockout punch.
Yeah, right.
So we're sitting, and when we get in there, also the plane was delayed for 2 hours, and I'm just
And
like,
you
yeah, I'm just
go,
like, this
Jesus.
is all
Sweating.
bad. This is all
Sweating
bad.
bullets.
Yeah,
Oh, geez.
but you walk in there, I'm still like looking, I'm still looking, and we sit
Yeah.
down, and I'm kind of like leaning my head against my girlfriend's shoulder, kind of trying to keep my head down, and
Yeah, of
there was
course, of
this
course.
couple there, and they looked like some like 40-year-old traveling like housewife and husband couple,
Having the
and
best time of their life.
they're going for a nice vacation somewhere.
Yeah.
They've got like luggage, like carry on luggage, and they came over, and they're like looking out the window, and he's looking in the paper, like reading the paper,
Ah,
and all of a sudden what I didn't see was some guy working at one of like newspaper stand, and a businessman with a briefcase that they had ID'd me. That later, when after they
right.
ID'd me, they had my
They
picture taped
seen
to the inside of the newspaper. So when he was looking at the newspaper, he was
he
comparing
was,
my picture
oh, damn.
to my face, and so they just came up and they jumped me and fucking.
At the end of the day, that was a blessing though, right?
Oh no,
Getting
yes,
getting
I
caught.
mean, I needed, prison destroys a lot of people. I will
Yes.
absolutely
Yep.
say, but
It
for
destroyed a
me,
part of me, but yes, like just,
you
a
know,
little bit.
but for me, it also it changed my life in other way. Like it definitely
Discipline.
it
And
did some damage, but I had I definitely had a moment of clarity while I was in prison that was a game changer for me.
yep.
And if I hadn't gone through that experience, and come out the other side of that, then I definitely would, uh, then if I hadn't gone in and had things change for me, then I never should have gotten out. To be
Yeah.
honest, I guess. But the moment of clarity, this sort of awakening, or I don't know what you call it, where that I had while I was there. Maybe I call it a moment of clarity. Uh,
Yep.
it affected me and still affects me, to this day.
Was
So
that?
it.
Did you find a higher power or something like that,
I mean,
or was
I
just
don't know. I still struggle with the concept of God or a higher power
yeah?
or anything
So
like
do
that.
I.
That's but certainly uh, I saw I had a real moment of clarity that the road I was on just ended with me staying in prison and hurting people,
And could be there
and
for it, like yeah, right.
yeah, and the uh, you know the I realized that I was at a crossroads in life, and I could
Mhm.
continue doing what I've been doing and continue hurting people and being a waste of a human life, or I could try and change everything, and so
Everything,
I,
yeah.
I yeah, so I would say it was uh, a spiritual a moment of clarity on a spiritual
Yeah.
realm,
It's hard
and
to have them in prison and maintain, like, you got all these people around you, but you have one of those and you wanna do good and shit, but sometimes you just gotta do some bad stuff in prison, you know? You know
that's
what
the
I'm talking
situation.
about?
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. Yes, that
Even though you
was
wanna be the best, like
right. That was time became a lot harder after
yes,
that,
that's what I'm
because
thinking.
yes, because I'm trying to do things differently, but
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that I wasn't expected to do what was expected of me,
yeah,
and so that was luckily uh, after that sort of moment of clarity, I had I had to do what I had to do because I was hanging with people. That was what was expected of me,
yeah.
but I
But
didn't
what
get caught. I didn't get caught for anything for a while, and I was trying to keep things as much on the down low as I possibly
oh,
could.
yeah,
And then finally, I was able to transfer to a lower level prison,
yep,
and there it was like my last 18 months. It was there wasn't a lot of politics. It was far different from any of the other environments that I had been in. So it was a lot easier for me
yeah,
uh, to actually,
to live that life of
yeah, yeah,
what you're
like
bringing.
because
Yeah,
up to that point, I made a moral or sort of a spiritual code for myself. That's like, okay, this is how I want to live,
yeah, yep.
and so I started trying to live that way. It was far easier to live that way in a lower level prison than it was,
In a level
before I
4.
before I transferred. Yes, before I
Yeah,
transferred. So,
I can
you know,
imagine.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and
And how long so you must have cleaned up in prison, right? And have you been clean ever since? Is it
well, so no, I had that moral code, and I did well, and I stayed out of trouble, and I was able to parole, and so I put 6 years together with where I didn't do anything.
yep,
But after 6 years, I'd been out on the street for I don't know, maybe like 4 years. Uh, I'd started playing music again. I was doing well, and I was on tour. Uh, Jim Martin had quit Faith No More, and he was playing guitar in Fang, which I don't know
I've
why
I've seen
I
the
don't know why
pictures,
he
mate.
did that.
I think it might have been a video even I've seen on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
he didn't like quit to join Fang, but he quit Faith No More, and then I was looking for a guitar player, and he calls me. He's like, "Hey, I heard you're looking for a guitar player." I'm like, "Yeah, do you
it's the
know anybody?"
strangest thing.
He's like, "No, I want to play." I'm like, "Jim, you were just playing stadium tours. Why would you
Yeah,
want to get in the van with me?" And he's like, "Dude," he goes, I've always loved you. I've loved Fang." He goes, I'm down." So I'm like, if you come on, he's a
the
fucking
keen.
great guitar player. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's
So
the name.
we were on tour, and we were at a club in San Diego, and Jim handed me, he drank Coors Light,
Yeah,
and Jim handed me a Coors Light, and I really didn't think that much about it, and I drank that Coors Light, and then that just opened. It wasn't like I immediately,
hmm
went crazy, but it opened that door, and then
yeah,
and ultimately, I mean, I lost everything. Once I start getting loaded, for me, I always go back to shooting heroin,
yeah.
and so I like that moral code, all that it went out. Like I had two kids, I abandoned my kids, I had a company, I had, like I bought property, and I fucked it all off. I
Yeah.
was
Started
married, and
running again. Yep.
yeah, and I lost everything. I should have gone back to prison, absolutely, 100%. Um, and
Did you
I
go on
don't
the
know.
methadone or anything?
A couple times. I hate methadone. I think
Yes,
it's
yes,
uh,
yeah.
I'm not a fan. I mean,
I'm trying to get off it right now myself.
but it's
Yeah.
fucking so hard, to get
It's
off.
very hard.
It's a fucking,
I've been trying for over a year, like counting down. It's been nearly 2 years counting down. Yeah,
and it's so
nearly there.
fucking hard because it's such a fucking, it's a trap,
Yeah,
and but harm reduction, it's like I'm definitely an advocate of harm reduction. It's keeping you out of trouble,
yep.
but the problem, at least in America, is they're not trying to really get anybody off it. They
That's
just
it. Neither in New Zealand, and
yeah,
I could see that, and I was like, I need off this shit. Like it's been
you
10
know
years. Time to
yeah,
get off this shit. You know,
10 years, it's like
like
the,
what the fuck?
but I mean, I've definitely done my time on methadone.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan,
I'm not a
that,
fan either, Sammy. But
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but if
And
it's
they want
eh, I, with anything, Suboxone, do they do Suboxone over in
Yeah,
New
I was just
Zealand?
about to say they want to put me on that after, but I'm like, nah, I'm just going off the methadone straight to
If
clean.
you
You know,
if you can, right? And I mean, the problem is when you transition, it's gonna be fucking, it's gonna be hard,
yeah, I've done it before from a street
Y-
methadone habit, but yeah, it's hard. And in prison, I had to come off benzos cold turkey,
Oh,
which were
benzos are
prescribed, and I was on a lot of them, and so I know what it's like to come off some heavy shit. But I think it'd be, you know, fuck
just
Suboxone. I don't want
just
another crutch.
cut yourself some slack. Give yourself, when you get down to that,
Yeah.
jumping off point.
There's a thing
Uh,
called kratom, and I've got some kratom sent to me, and that instead of doing Suboxone, it's not like an opiate or anything, but it
yeah,
helps with withdrawals or something. So I'm just
I've
going
heard
to
of
take.
Kratom. I don't really know much about it because that kind of came out after. I mean, it's big now.
Yeah,
It's
I
after
don't know much.
after
It's
my
not legal
time.
here or anything. I had to get it sent in, but
Oh, because I think
yeah,
Kratom is legal in the
it
U.S.
is. Yeah,
Yeah, so I just don't really know. I don't know anything about it. Uh,
yeah. So
I
that's what
know
I'll use
the
to get off.
last time. So I've been clean now for 15 years. you
15.
know yeah, and but so I had that 6 years, and then I was out for about 8 years, and
Okay.
finally, um, I went. I was doing a lot of crime down in Texas. My crimey got busted, and he,
Mm.
was sent back to prison. He'd been in prison in Texas before,
Yep.
and I came back to California, and uh, there's a woman who's, had tried to help me before, but she had a house with this basement room, and Nikki Sicky from Verbal Abuse,
Oh,
he's one of my
verbal abuse,
oldest
I know.
friends. Him and this girl, we boarded up all the windows. We put like plywood, like screwed all windows
Yep.
completely shut, and we put a deadbolt in the door, so you had to have a key to get out of the room.
Yep.
And Nikki and this woman Janine, they locked me in this room for like a month,
Wow.
because like there was I just once,
That's what it needed.
that's, yeah, there's like I just create like when I'm fucked up like that, I just can't stop,
Yeah.
and so usually like if I'm so I just created a cell, and they just locked me up
Well,
in
I
the
don't think I
cell.
could have got off benzos if I wasn't made to get off benzos in
Plus,
prison.
yeah, if we weren't locked
You
up,
know, if I had a
it,
choice, that wouldn't have happened. You
yeah,
know? Yeah.
so that was, and even after, uh, like, I really thought, okay, I just need to kick heroin and I'll be okay. And I was
Mm.
so not okay
Yeah.
after a month and an 8 year run. I was physically, because I was
Beat
like
up.
I was like 41 at the time, or something, 40, yeah, 41, 42. And I was fucked off, like physically,
Yeah. Yeah.
taking its fucking toll. It took me months to feel like I remember even after 6 months, I'm like, dude, am I ever gonna feel
I felt the
physically
same, man. Yeah.
yeah,
Fuck yeah.
it's super hard,
Doesn't
but
feel like it's ever gonna
but
come right. Yeah.
I did hang, and I started, hanging out with people that were in recovery, and
Mhm.
doing that whole
Very important.
deal, and it absolutely worked for me. I will say, I'm an advocate of whatever fucking works.
Yep.
That I
We're
don't,
all individuals.
whatever works. I don't pick a side. I don't give a shit. Like
Mhm.
whatever works.
Yeah.
For anybody, I'm all for it. You know,
Oh, same.
It's-
Yep.
you
Yeah, I
know,
agree with that.
yeah,
Like, Andy Roy, he's been clean for a while now, and he had a long road, didn't he? You know,
yes,
it
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
He
you
was
know,
he ran amok. He did, and
yeah,
now he's clean. He's doing super well, and he's giving back. That's definitely one thing that this time around was very different. The first time, uh, I wasn't involved in any kind of recovery program. I wasn't trying to do
yeah.
anything to help other people. It was all just about me, and building shit up, and that's definitely different this time around. You
And
know.
you helping others with this recovery helps yourself in the same time of
Yeah,
everyone's like
yeah.
clean. You know what I
And
mean? It's
also
like
just staying on the front lines. Like in Oakland for years, I had a halfway house for men that I
okay,
owned and operated,
wow,
and that was like, most of these guys are coming out of, jail or
yeah,
prison, and that, I know, I'm still in touch with some of those guys, that were there, and that was, it kept me, it was a reminder, it
yeah,
like kept me, it's like, okay, this is, because it's hard, I mean, if the
yeah,
guys come there, they uh, a lot of them would really want to stay clean, want to stay sober, and despite their best efforts, and it's I, it's a crapshoot. I don't know what it was for myself that's been able for me to like been able to stay clean this long.
yeah.
I've seen a lot of people, certainly a lot better individuals than myself, that this
Fall
like,
off the wagon.
that, yeah, that fucking, so,
Mm.
uh, but
Well,
certainly
15
I've,
years and counting's very well.
you
It's
know,
fucking
yeah, and I, I've worked in the industry off and on, as a drug and alcohol counselor, and that's you know, some people have ideas about that. That's a the I like working as a drug and alcohol counselor. The last job I had, right now, I'm not currently doing that, but I was working as a domestic violence facilitator,
Okay.
and that job for me uh, was one of the best jobs that I've had, because I saw a lot more change in the men, you
And
know.
you've gone through that change of
Yes, yeah,
done that.
that
So like
just
it's
the whole idea of uh, toxic masculinity, misogyny, unequal relationships, all that stuff,
mhm, yeah.
and I think and I get it too. The thing with being a drug and alcohol counselor, especially like the last job I had as a counselor, were people were being sent by the courts there,
Okay. So they're not going
and
on their own
yeah,
merit.
and it's like, I know, it's like, dude, I know how that is. It's like,
You-
I wasn't ready till I was ready. You get some asshole
Exactly.
telling you, oh, you need to get clean. It's like, go fuck
Yeah.
yourself.
And
It's
you
like
can see
people,
right through that bullshit. You've been
yeah,
there. So
and I get it. I totally
yeah.
get it. It's like,
Yep.
if you're not ready, you're not fucking ready,
Yeah.
and
And that's all you
so
really got to say, right? Is you're not ready, you know,
yeah,
if you're not
and
ready.
it's like, okay, well, uh, but I will say that working with domestic violence, perpetrators of domestic violence, most of the people that show up there, even though they're being court ordered, they
They
actually are,
want.
they want to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the, that they don't. Most of them don't want to hurt anybody anymore. So
That's right. That's the
so
same
it's
here.
it
There's things like that here, and I see that too. And people coming out of prison with
yeah,
things that
you
had to
know
go through programs that wanted it. Yeah,
but that's
over
it's
drugs
it's an easier
more than drugs.
sell than drugs. That
Yeah,
people coming in there, because a lot of people coming into drug court or whatever, they don't want to stop getting high. They just,
no, they
but
just caught. They got caught.
yeah, they just got caught. Yeah,
Yeah,
and like, I totally get that. I get it,
same.
because when I was getting high, until I was really ready, it didn't matter what anybody told me.
Yeah,
It just
fucking
didn't. I'm
oath.
like, it's like, I'm over here doing my thing. Go leave me
Yeah,
alone. You know,
yeah.
so I get that, but yeah. So that's certainly, I at some point right now, I took some time off, and we're about to go on tour. And
So I've
but
got a tour.
that's I think in the long run, probably I'll end up trying to go back more to working in that field.
Yeah,
You know.
I think this is the
Oh yeah, that's the
tour, isn't it?
if I don't know who listens to this, but if anybody's in Europe, we'll be coming through with Stalag 13. They're another they're SoCal old school punk rock band. Great guys. I've known
Yep.
Blake and Ron for forever. These
Okay.
days. So the band Doctor No.
Yes. Yes.
So the singer for Doctor No, Brandon Cruz, his brother is the guitar player in Stalag 13.
Oh, okay. Small world.
So
Fuck.
yeah, so the Cruz brothers. And I've
Right.
known those guys. I mean, these days, it's like I've known those guys for like 40 fucking years now. We've known each other
Wow.
forever. So I'm super stoked to be going out with Stalag 13.
You guys play a
It's
lot together, right? Like I
we
see.
have been, yeah, and
Yeah.
with Doctor No too, because we just
Yeah.
know, and verbal abuse.
Wicked. Wicked.
Those are like probably uh, Stalag 13, Doctor No, and Verbal Abuse are the bands that maybe I've played with more than any other band
I I see
over
some
the
very
years.
skateboard iconology here. Hey, were you a skateboarder, Sammy?
Yeah, yeah. When I was
You
a kid,
were.
I don't really skate much anymore. I still have a deck,
Yeah.
and
A fang deck.
uh, but yeah, I have a Fang deck, and I still every once in a while will street skate, but as
Yeah,
far as like
yeah.
some of those guys, like uh, they're still skating, like going down
The
and
bonus
and
ones,
they're
do they still skate?
Brandon surfs definitely. He still skates.
Okay, cool.
Blake still I think surfs. Um, and some of the guys I grew up with, they still like Jim Thiebaud. He's
Oh,
still he
you
worked.
know Jim Tebow?
Yeah,
You
we
grew
grew
up
up
with him?
together. We were
Oh,
friends
wow.
prior to punk rock, even. Like
Oh
we
my
were
God.
in elementary school together. We were like
Oh,
best friends in the fourth grade and the
mate,
fifth
you're
grade,
blowing my mind.
and kind of got into the punk rock scene together. And Yeah, so but
He's
like me,
been away.
I crashed my motorcycle in February and like broke my ankle in three places and had to get
I
two plates put in and nine screws. And I'm just like
saw
going,
that.
and the recovery, from that, it's like so much, at this age, it's so much slower. I'm like, dude, I don't know about fucking, because like
Skateboarding.
breaking shit when you're this old, it just takes a hell of a lot longer
Yeah.
to
My
recover from.
bandmates hate that I'm a skateboarder because we've got, I'll break my wrist. I've had surgery on my ankle, and it's just like, wear your pads if you're going out. And I don't want to wear that shit, you know?
They're like, quit fucking around. We got shows to play. What the fuck?
Exactly. I'll take it easy if we got a show coming up, and then after the show, I'll go hard.
Just go
You
out
know?
and
Yeah,
So
get some
yeah.
footy.
So I don't I haven't skated like in a pipe or a bowl, like at a skate park in a long time. Like I said, I
You would have
I
come up
was
when it
at
was
least
bowls, right? Like
yeah,
mostly
and
bowl skating?
yeah, and like people would build half pipes in their backyards,
Yep, yep.
but like Jimmy and I, well, nobody calls him Jimmy. Jim Thiebaud, they opened Alameda Skate Park when we were kids, and we were like, we go skate at Alameda Skate Park,
Yeah.
and it was probably now, if you look at what they built back then, everybody would just laugh. They're like, it was probably so because
Rudimentary.
I watch people who skate now, and it's just like I don't even know
I
how
don't
people
know how they
do.
do it.
It just fucking blows my mind.
Yeah, it does to me too. And it's a little bit too advanced. I feel like I like the, I don't know, 90s era where it's all style, it's all things I can do, you know. But Jim Tebow was like a very early one of the very early street skaters,
Yeah,
right?
he got picked up and signed. Like so, uh, like we hit high school, and I had my parents had moved to the UK the family had moved to the UK in I guess it would have been 78. And
Yep.
so when I was
How old are
because it
you?
was so I was 12, 13, I guess. And
Perfect time to
so
be there.
that was where I was introduced to punk rock. And
Yeah.
so when I came back, uh, we moved back in 79, and Jimmy and I, uh, uh, he had actually through somebody, through one of his mom's boyfriends had been introduced to the Ramones. So like I had a Sex Pistols record and he had a Ramones record, and we're like, okay, this is the
Marriage.
shit right here. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is it, and so uh,
Fuck yeah.
I and so we skated together, and I really got into punk rock, and so he went more off into skating and I went more off into punk rock as we
Yep.
got older, and also I got a lot more into crime. That was the other thing too, where Jimmy, like we were stealing BMX bikes, and we had like a chop shop, and we strip them all down and build them and sell them,
Uh,
and but I think that that was more. I don't think Jimmy probably would have done that if not. That
if
was
not for
more
you.
my influence.
Yeah.
And so I definitely went far more. Well, he never dropped out. He graduated high school, but like as a towards the end of the freshman year, that the cops, they knew I was dealing. They kept coming and fucking hassling me in school, and it was
Yeah.
just so
When
I
when you were
was
dealing acid, did you know like there's an amount of sheets or tabs it's you can get charged with overthrowing the government for
I
like
know back then they were weighing it by the paper, and it was just like they were sending people to prison for a long, long
yeah,
time.
people that went to
But
Grateful Dead shows are still in prison, like you know,
yeah,
from the 90s.
yeah, that
Yeah,
they were. But the other thing about it was that you couldn't detect it.
yeah,
You know that so Fang moved to I moved Fang to Germany in 1985.
yeah.
And so,
Okay.
you know, and I've been dealing acid already because I was brought in when I was like 15, you know, and so this was 1985. I turned 20 years old in 1985. So I was 19 when we moved there. And
Right.
so I, you know, just took a box of Landshark records and then I
Yeah.
dipped a bunch of acid, you know, a bunch of blotter paper, but it didn't perfect. So it was just a piece of paper, like
Oh,
a thick piece of paper, and I just in all the records I put
oh
you know a
mate.
thousand hits in
Perfect.
you know all the records, and you know, like
Wow.
if they opened it up and looked at it, it would just been a thick piece of paper, so I was padding, you know, and it
Yeah.
didn't have a print on it. It wasn't perforated, so it just looked like you know a thicker piece of
Wicked.
paper.
That
Super
is a
easy,
good
yeah,
method.
super fucking easy to
Yeah.
move LSD back then. Well, and to a degree, I guess I'd imagine it still is. It's like dogs can't sniff it. It's you know
Yeah.
so that's what when we moved to we first moved. Well, I told the band I'm like if everybody get your plane ticket together, and then once we get to Europe, I'll take care of us because I'll start selling acid over there.
Yep.
The only one that got it together was the bass player, the guitar player, and the drummer
Was
Tim Stiletto that you had that picture of. They I think maybe they were it was too far like this sounds
too much.
crazy like we're just gonna move to Europe but I
Yeah.
was
How are we
always like
gonna do
fuck it
that?
yeah
Yeah.
but we did me and Joe and we first moved to Guildford and there was this band called the Stupids. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Stupids from the UK.
No.
They were
No.
an 80s punk rock band. We got Tommy Stupid on drums, and we had this other guitar player, and we started jamming. And I was trying to deal acid in the UK, but in '85 everyone was super poor in England,
Okay. Yeah.
and so it was really hard. We were living in a squat, you know, and there was like no shows happening hardly. It was super.
Ooh,
I was super depressed at the
freezing.
time, you know, and so
Yeah.
finally after a couple months, I'm like, dude, we're just getting nowhere here, you know, and so uh, I'd had a phone number for somebody in Germany. And I called them. I'm like, hey, we're this American punk rock band, and they're like, yeah, come to Germany. So
Yeah.
we came to Germany, and everything was so it worked out super well. We started, you know, we picked
Did
up a
you
couple
guys
German.
release or record Amiga Safafas around
Yeah, and then
then in Germany
in
as well?
Germany, and our third album, Spun Helga, that
Yep.
was we recorded that one in Germany, and Amigas Fafash we recorded in Germany. We were supposed to record our fifth record, Pissed Off Buddha,
Yep.
in Germany, but then my acid dealing empire got busted.
Oh
So
no.
I had created you
Yeah.
know selling acid in Europe through Germany and my girlfriend in Germany, actually, she was dealing for me. She got busted,
Yeah.
and then so then I was wanted by Interpol because her roommate had given me up, and so
You
we were
got
supposed
out
to
of
go
there.
back. Yeah, we were supposed to go back and tour and record again. And I got a phone call saying, don't come. That you know
Yeah.
that Interpol knows you're wanted. They know you're going to be here. You know, they know you're coming. They know you're going to tour. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end for me, actually, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's when
I
things really
yeah, I
started to
can see that.
unravel.
I can see
You
that.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the other thing about Germany too was, for whatever reason, uh, I never, I didn't, I would drink in Germany, but I would really wouldn't shoot dope. You
And was there much
know,
dope around to shoot?
well, there was, but I fell in with these kids, uh, like the first time we went there, and um, eh, like I caught my first heroin habit when I was 16. I was
Wow,
shooting
that's
dope,
young.
and I kicked when I was 17, and then I would chip, But usually we were touring a bunch, so right about the time I was getting a habit, we'd go out on the road,
Yep. And then you're
and then
clean
yeah, and then I would
after a
drink and
week.
party, but
Yeah.
I wasn't shooting dope every day,
Yeah.
and so when we went to Europe, when we moved to Europe, we were there for like a year. Uh, I didn't, there was dope. I mean, there's dope everywhere,
Yeah.
but in England, I didn't really search it out. And then in Germany, there was definitely, it was around, but I just, the people like, uh, I got to Germany, everybody drank like we ended up in this town called Bremen. Everybody in
Yeah.
the punk scene, it was like super like uh,
It's a drinking
hard.
culture. Yeah.
It's drinking culture, and also there was the whole there was the anti-skin league, so that all the
Okay.
there were anti-Nazis there, and
Yep.
so I fell in with these guys, and they drank and they partied and they were fighting Nazis all the time. I'm like, this is fucking awesome, This is like,
Yeah.
this
Fucking
is
oath.
where and they had a street gang there called the Outsiders, and they jumped me into their street gang,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, it was fucking, Bremen at that time. Bremen was even kind of notorious in the rest of Germany for its drinking and for its Nazi fighting,
Oh, wow.
And
Cool.
so yeah, it was a blast. So I just didn't really, and the people I hung out with, they didn't. Uh, None of them, they smoked hash, they
Hmm.
drank, but none of them used hair, none of them used hard drugs,
Okay.
and
They
so it
didn't
just,
smoke dope. Did you, oh, hash. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Okay. But no hard
so
drugs yet.
yeah, so like
Dope.
I said, partied, drank a shit ton, but no
I guess,
heroin, very rarely any coke or anything else either,
I guess that's good you fell in with that crowd then, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was. It totally, things worked out super well. Like I said, we started recording over there, um, and 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 I was going back and forth a lot, and we were touring over there. It was great time to be, all through like 85 to 89 when I, finally caught my case. That it's awesome time to be in Europe. Punk rock
Yep.
in Central Europe was fucking just, kicking off. It was really great time to
Did you
be over there and touring.
did you know Smelly from NoFX back then in the
Uh,
80s?
so we did a East Coast tour. I want to say 87, maybe 88, something like that. Maybe somewhere between 86 and 89. We did an
Yeah.
East Coast tour with No Effects.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that I don't even know. I don't remember now who
Well,
organized that,
Smelly was
but
the drummer, right? And he had a dope habit in the 80s.
yeah, and they
Yeah.
were they were younger than us, and they were just kind of a brand new band,
Yeah.
but we ended up. I I think we were on. I was probably, it was like a whole U.S. tour, but we hooked up and did, a bunch
A
of
leg.
shows on
Yeah.
the, yeah, a leg with no effects. So, and that
Cool.
was that
Wow.
was back when, they were, before they became rock stars and before they became
Before they were
famous.
no effects, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And now they're over and you're still going. How's that? Well, they're nearly, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, is there anything you want to, apart from the European dates, you want to talk
Well,
about?
we put out a new record. It came out in
Okay.
February. It's called No Warning, Shots Fired. I don't
Okay, no
know.
warning shots fired.
Yeah, it's on Bandcamp,
Yep.
so you can
Bandcamp.
check it out on Bandcamp. It's on Spotify. I assume you guys have Spotify in New Zealand.
Yep.
I
Okay,
think
I'll
it's on
find
all
that.
the streaming platforms. It came out in February, um, and it's. I mean, I don't know if like to ship records over to Europe. You know, we have a big cartel where you can buy shit, but it's so fucking expensive to
Yeah.
to have anything shipped over there. But it is, like I said, you can at least listen to it on the platforms.
But
And
even to
so
get your records over to New Zealand, mate, it costs a lot of money, eh? To
it's
get
way more. Yeah, it's like it
the
costs
shipping.
more than the record itself. You know,
Yeah.
like you buy a record for 20-25 bucks, it's like 25 to 30 bucks to ship it over. You know,
Yeah.
so I know we do have distribution through uh, Revolver, I think. So it may be in New Zealand, but I don't know.
Okay.
You
Well,
know,
I'll check that out because my local record store, they get in. I'll see if that's in New Zealand
yeah,
because I'm keen. I'm keen.
and then hopefully you will see us sometime in New Zealand. You know, like that's
Oh,
really all I'm trying to do is trying to fucking to tour as much as possible. You know,
yep.
and
I would
and
love to
out.
see you guys in New Zealand.
Yeah, we're trying to get out of the United States too, for the most
Yeah.
part. You know.
And man, these Fang boards, they are so cool. They are so fucking cool. And yeah. But as I
So,
say, the shipping to New Zealand is a lot of money.
shoot, I know it's insane, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I
Hey,
appreciate, yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
hey, thanks for coming on, Sammy. It's
All right,
as I said, it's I really appreciate it, and a special guest. You know,
all right.
fucking
And if you make it to the United States, hit me up. And like I said, hopefully we'll make it to New Zealand before too much longer. It's definitely like Australia, New Zealand are. I think we're supposed to go to Southeast Asia next year, but I think maybe 2025 I'll really start
okay.
working on Australia and New Zealand. You
Well,
know,
that would be bloody excellent. I would love to see that.
so you better have your band ready because we're gonna need,
Oh,
you know,
'cause we're
yeah,
gonna, you mean your opening? Yeah,
yeah,
I'll be ready, mate. I'll be
yeah.
ready.
All right,
Okay. Well, thank you, Sammy,
all
and
right,
have a good day.
all right. You guys, you take care of yourself.
Yep. You too. Peace out.
All right. I don't know how to get out of here.